For the past month or so, the Prado has had some issues starting up. Mainly, it just takes a bit more time than usual to fire. It usually fires up as soon as you turn the key, but now it needs about a second, which isn't normal for this car. And while I was sitting there trying to figure out what the problem might be, I remembered that I can't remember when I last changed the fuel filter. Now, the fuel filter on diesel engines is one of the most important maintenance items because it cleans the fuel for the fuel pump and the injectors. In case you didn't know, the fuel pump and the injectors on diesel engines work at much higher pressures than those on petrol engines, so they really need good flow and clean diesel. If the diesel isn't clean, you will destroy your fuel pump and your injectors, which are insanely expensive to replace. Now, if the fuel filter is clogged and restrictive, then the engine will obviously not run correctly and will have issues firing up. So instead of diving into the more expensive things like glow plugs, injectors and the fuel pump, I thought I would start from the simplest thing, which is the fuel filter. And as I said, I can't remember when I last changed it, so I am not practicing what I preach here, but we will see if this filter does any difference to the way this thing runs and starts up, because it is also running a bit rough. If it doesn't make a difference, then this video is still valuable because you still have to change your fuel filter. So let's get into it. On most old diesels, changing the fuel filter is a very easy process, as you will see. On some newer cars, you might need a diagnostic tool to prime the pump again, but for these old vehicles, you certainly do not need that. Newer vehicles are even more susceptible to damage from neglected fuel filters, so it is even more important that you change the fuel filter on newer vehicles than it is on older ones. These are pretty much old tractors, and this is the main reason why I have completely forgotten to change this one. It may be worth wearing some gloves for this job because you will most probably get diesel on your hands. The fuel filter is actually so important that in some areas of the world, like Australia or Africa, people tend to put dual fuel filters to make sure that there is no contamination making its way into the fuel system, because in remote areas of those parts of the world, diesel sits for a long time in the fuel stations and it can get contaminated with water. So to avoid damage when they drive through the middle of nowhere, basically, they use dual fuel filters. The old filter is out. Now it's time to assemble everything back in. So this was in the bottom, and obviously the part on top goes on top. Now for sure this isn't going to be the same for your vehicle, but as I said, if you have an old diesel, it should be a straightforward job. I know it is also very simple to do this on the 300 TDI on the Land Rover. So if you have a bit of spare time, go ahead and change your Land Rover or any other car fuel filter. Make sure this thing is tight because you don't want diesel leaking everywhere while the car is running. Now all that is left to do is connect the fuel lines, and we are ready to prime the filter, and then the car is ready to start up. To prime it, you just press down on this right here and it will suck the diesel from the fuel lines and bring it into the fuel filter, and then you're pretty much ready to start the car. You will know that the filter is primed when the pump gets stiffer.